He is risen. He is risen indeed. Today is Resurrection Sunday. It is a great day in the life of the church. It gives us the reason to have every other day in the life of the church because Jesus has risen just as he said. Hey, back in March, I was down in Florida for a meeting, and I was sitting that morning in the motel at the breakfast area, and there was a large screen TV over on one side of the room. You couldn't hear it, but I noticed they were talking about this ship that they had discovered that had sunk over 100 years ago. I was intrigued, but I couldn't hear what was going on. So later I went back and I got on the internet and I found out about this sunken ship that had been found. The ship had been built back in the 1900s, and it was designed to withstand the demands of the oceans around Antarctica. Remember, there's a lot of ice there. 2 days after leaving South Georgia Island, which is at the tip of South America, this three-masted, beautiful ship got stuck in the ice. As one of the crew members described it, it was like they were like an almond stuck in a chocolate bar. The crew, there were 28 men, there were 69 dogs and a cat, and they were trying to figure out, what are we going to do? We're stuck in the ice. And the ice was becoming more powerful than the ship could handle. Finally, Captain Ernest Shackleton gave the order, abandon ship. And take the supplies. So they moved off of the ship onto this ice floe, an iceberg, something that was floating of ice. And it wasn't long before the hull of the ship began to snap. The masts had broken because of the weight of the ice, and it was sinking. It was here just this year in 2022 that the ship was found a little over 100 years later. And it was almost completely intact, except for the masses. The ice that Shackleton and his men were on was not a safe place to stay. It was breaking apart. And so they were forced to take the 3 lifeboats that they had and start moving towards Elephant Island. When they landed, they weren't where they needed to be. They were not at the whaling station where they could get help. Now remember, this is back in 1915, so radio signals would not have even helped. It wasn't available at that time. 2 men joined Shackleton, and they hiked a path that wasn't there. They hiked a path that didn't exist to the whaling station. Before leaving, Shackleton told Frank Wild, the man that he left in charge, the boss may come today. So every day, Wild would go to the men and say, lash and stow. Lash and stow. It meant that the boss may be coming back today, and we need to be found ready. The crew was coming to the end of their ropes. They had been abandoned. They about abandoned hope when 128 days after Shackleton had left, he had secured another ship and was coming to get them. He took the entire crew home to England. Not one crew member passed. Shackleton was a great leader because he wasn't thinking of himself or trying to make a name for himself. He abandoned his exploration of finding the South Pole. So it wasn't about him. It was about the crew, not one individual. It was his love for those who had worked that had worked with him that drew him to come back for them. So as I researched the story, I was reminded of something I learned years ago. Never forget those who helped you get to where you are. I think that's a very important thing to remember, is to never forget to those who helped you get to where you are. I'm also reminded as I read this story to never give up hope. Even when it looks like there is nothing left to hold on to, don't give up hope. As we celebrate this great day of Resurrection Sunday, it's a day of hope in the midst of fear. What we are celebrating is the impossible. And what was told would happen since the beginning of time, we celebrate. Remember back in December, we were celebrating what? The birth of Jesus. And what a great thing that is. But that was a time, that was his birth changed all history. Because prior to his birth, we were recording things in BC. Now, because of his birth and his death, we record time in AD. Life-changing. And in a span of 33 years of his life here on earth, Jesus did what has what God called him to do. Jesus has always been. He walked with God in the beginning. He was with God at creation, but he came to earth as an infant so that we could identify with him. At the age of 30, he began his ministry to mankind. He didn't come to condemn the world. He knew we would do that on our own. He came to seek and save that which was lost, us. We were lost because we were disconnected from God by our own sin. In what we call the Old Testament of the Bible, man sought forgiveness by sacrificing animals to God. And what Jesus did in the New Testament took care of all sacrifices once and for all. And I'm very thankful for that. As a church, we celebrate this day because of what it stands for. For most of us, if we go and visit the grave of a loved one, we're sad. We don't rush to that grave marker. We walk solemnly with a hurting and heavy heart, remembering the times we wish that person was with us again. And even though we know they can't be with us, we would like them to be there, but we wouldn't want them to be the way we last remembered them. When Mary, the mother of Jesus, and the others came to the tomb, that may have been what they were expecting things to be. They were anticipating everything was over with. But what they found was a brand new beginning. Their grief and their pain made it impossible for them to remember not just what Jesus said would take place, but what the prophecies of the Bible said about him and said would be happening. These things were written thousands of years before. We celebrate because the grave Jesus was placed in is empty. And out of that emptiness, we find our hope as a church. I want to read a passage to you today. It's an entire chapter. It's found in Isaiah 53. Follow with me. Who has believed our message, and to whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? He grew up before him like a tender shoot, like a root out of the dry ground, and had no beauty or majesty to attract us to him, nothing in his appearance that we would desire. He was despised and rejected by men, a man of sorrow and familiar with suffering. Like one from whom men hide their face, he was despised and not esteemed, and we esteemed him not. Surely he took up our infirmities and carried our sorrows. Yet we considered him stricken by God, smitten by him, and afflicted. But he was pierced for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. The punishment that brought us peace was upon him, and by his wounds we are healed. We are like sheep. We have gone astray. Each of us has turned to our own ways, and the Lord has laid on him the iniquities of us all. He was oppressed and afflicted, yet he did not open his mouth. And he was led like a lamb to the slaughter, and as a sheep before her shears is silent, so he did not open his mouth. By oppression and judgment he was taken away. And who can speak of his descendants? For he was cut off from the land of the living. For the transgressions of my people he was stricken. He was assigned a grave with the wicked and with the rich in his death, though he had done no violence, nor was any deficit in his mouth, any deceit in his mouth. Yet it was the Lord's will to cause him to crush him and cause him to suffer. And though the Lord makes his life a guilt offering, he will see his offspring and prolong his day, and the will of the Lord will prosper in his hand. In the suffering of his soul, he will see the light of life and be satisfied. By his knowledge, my righteous servant will justify many, and he will bear their iniquities. There I will give him a portion among the great, and he will divide the spoils with the strong, because he has poured out his life unto death, and was numbered with the transgressors. For he bore the sins of many, and made intercession for the transgressors. Man, that is a great passage and a great reminder of what Jesus did or was going to do, because that was written in Isaiah. That was written over 1,000 years before Jesus came to earth, and he fulfilled every part of that. In the story of that ship, the Endurance, that was the name of the ship that sunk, the Endurance, it didn't endure. What stood out to me was the order that was given to Mr. Wild to tell the men, lash and stow. Each day, lash and stow. Each day, get ready. This may be the day that Shackleton returns. Today, at the close of this message and the close of the church service here today, I hope that you will walk out of the building or shut down your phone, whatever you're watching this on. But because if you don't leave, you can't come back. Yeah, well, back in December, we recognized and celebrated the birth of Jesus. Jesus wasn't born then. He has always been. He was with God in the creation of the world. And it is at Christmas that we recognize God sending his son so that we could identify through his physical birth and we could identify with him. Paul said, I want to know Christ. Yes, I want to know the power of his resurrection and participate in his suffering, becoming like him in death. Jesus spent 33 years on earth. He started his earthly ministry at the age of 30. He was feeding people, healing people, delivering people, instructing people, finally giving himself up for all people. And while he was alive, he told his disciples, his closest followers, and others that he was going to go through this terrible death, a death on the cross, but he would rise again. Coming back from the dead was an amazing miracle. He said he would do that, and he did that. Yet don't forget what else he said. He said, lash and stow. He said those weren't the words of Jesus, but they carry the same meaning of what Jesus said, I am coming again. And if he never left, he wouldn't ever be able to come back. Just like when we leave the building, we have to leave so that we can come back. The crew of the Endurance had to be ready so when Shackleton returned, they could be rescued. They got restless at times. They thought of giving up at times. They were at odds with each other. But every day, Mr. Wild said, lash and stow, lash and stow. Church, lash and stow. Are you ready? Because this is what Jesus said to us. Do not let your hearts be troubled. Trust in God. Trust also in me. In my Father's house has many rooms. If it were not so, I would have told you. But I'm going to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come back and take you to be with me, that you also may be where I am. You know the way to the place I am going. Thomas said to him, Lord, we do not know where you are going, so how can we know the way? And Jesus answered, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. I've got a friend by the name of Brent. Brent is getting ready to go on a trip. He is going to hike across with his wife a very long stretch, about 600 miles through Spain. Now, they're going on foot. They're not going in car. They're not carrying suitcases. They're carrying backpacks. And it's been recommended to them that their backpack weigh no more than 10% of their ideal body weight. Not their current body weight, but their ideal body weight. Because if it was what their body weight was, it'd be too heavy of a pack. If it was too low, they wouldn't have enough to take them. They are only taking one change of clothes. They'll have the clothing on their back, and then they'll have a second change. And every night, they'll wash in a tub what they have on, hang it up to dry. Put on the fresh clothes for the next day, and repeat the process day after day. 2 outfits. Now, one of the dangers of this lightweight backpack is we tend to pack in life what we fear. You do that. I do that. We carry with us what we fear. If my friend feared he would not have a soft bed to sleep in, he might carry a backpack, carry a sleeping bag. If his wife feared there wouldn't be enough water, she might carry extra water. If they feared there wouldn't be enough food, they would carry extra food. If they feared there may be dangerous animals or something, they may carry extra weapons. But all those things add weight to what they are carrying. And that weight adds a burden to their body. Some people have carried a light, one of those lights that hooks onto your head. It got too heavy in a heartbeat and they threw it aside. All sorts of things thrown aside because they get too heavy as we go. I'm reminded of what we read in 1 John chapter 4, verse 16. And so we know and rely on the love God has for us. My friend needs to rely on the love God has for him and rely on the fact that he doesn't have to carry his fears. God is love. Whoever lives in love lives in God and God in them. This is how love is made complete among us so that we will have confidence on the day of judgment. In this world, we are like Jesus. There is no fear in love, 1 John 4:18. Perfect love drives out fear because fear has to do with punishment. The one who fears is not made perfect in love. We love because he first loved us. Whoever claims to love God yet hates his brother or his sister is a liar. For whoever does not love their brother or sister who they have seen cannot love God whom they have not seen. And he gives us this command: anyone who loves God must also love their brother and sister. Shackleton came back for his men, and I believe he did that out of love. He remembered he wouldn't have gotten to where he was if it wasn't without them. Then he gave that instruction to them: lash and stow. Jesus is telling us, don't pack your fears. I've overcome them. I've beaten them with a big ugly stick that you call a cross. Jesus didn't get to where he was because of us. He got there for us. And he is saying, get ready. Don't give up hope. Keep putting hope into others and what my word says. So my friends, this resurrection day, are you ready to meet him when he comes? You can let go of those fears by putting your faith and your trust in something that is real and is true, and that is Jesus Christ. You don't need your fears to be weighing you down any longer. We don't know when Jesus will return, but I'll tell you this: my Jesus always keeps his word. He's coming back. You better be ready. If you've never received him as your Lord and Savior, I invite you to contact me in any way. Message me, call me, get a hold of me. I want you to know the one I know, because that is where my hope is. And my hope is in nothing less but Jesus Christ and his righteousness. Blessings to you, friends, and happy Resurrection Day. Bye-bye.